Now, before we really get started on the course, I want to kind of show you a diagram here, a couple of animations, and kind of really give you a real simplified overview of exactly what ASP is and how it works. And it's really hard to talk about ASP.NET without first going backwards into ASP and talk about some of the things that ASP is solving. So the first thing we want to look at is, I want you to picture a client machine, a user. And this is any machine you want it to be, running a web browser, Internet Explorer, those sorts of things. Now, this client is going to request some web pages from a web server using the Internet. Okay, and so through HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol, and the magic of TCP/IP and DNS. If all that makes sense, good. If it don't worry about it right now. We make a request to a web server typing a URL in a browser, www.microsoft.com. That tells the web server to send me back the default file, and if I typed a specific file, it would send that back. Now, in early days with the Internet, there would have been an HTML file or an HTML file sitting on the web server, and this thing was coded up with HTML, and it was static, meaning that if 50 people from 50 different places on the Internet requested this particular page, it always looked the same to them. These things were online brochures. Now, this is early to mid-90s in some situations. And this was kind of cool at first. We could see pictures of, the president of the company and his dog or whatever. And that was okay, but it got really limiting in the fact that we couldn't really know what this user wanted. We couldn't get a lot of information from them without using some pretty sophisticated technologies. And so that's one of the problems that ASP solved, because we would take this static page and just kind of throw it back to the user. And so that's, if it wasn't in here, if it wasn't coded in the HTML right here, it didn't happen. And if it was coded there, it happened every time just that way. So ASP gave us the ability for this client to sit out there and again, make a request of a page through the Internet to a web server. And again, this page is there, but notice now there's a different file extension. Instead of HTML, it would have been an ASP. Now, the ASPX designates that this is a .NET ASP page. But for now, let's concentrate on ASP. So this is an ASP page. Now, that file extension tells the web server that when this particular page runs, that there is down here now in the bottom some additional code that needs to be handled by the guys down in the ASP department. And so it's going to pass that down to ASP. Now, a little clarification here. Early ASP ran as an interpreter, more or less. ASP was an interpreted server-side scripting language. And we used VBScript or JavaScript or JScript. And this is actually on the server, okay, but I couldn't really draw it here and make that clear. But ASP resides on the server, and it would take this HTML page, and it would parse through, and it would strip out the ASP code written in VBScript, JavaScript, and cause certain functionalities to happen. And so what we get then is that ASP could render or write its own HTML. So based on conditions, if-then statements, conditions based on what the user passed in, we could change some things on the web page dynamically and then pass that back out to the user, which means now that based on what this user clicked on or pointed at or filled out in a form, ASP could make changes to it and render a different page going back, so that if multiple clients here all requested this same page, they might see 3 or 4 different web pages come back to them based on choices that they had filled out or things that they had done differently on the page. That's where ASP gave us the interaction. Now, we had this interaction with other technologies, and we'll talk about those when we talk about the history of ASP, but this made it a lot easier. Now, the ultimate with ASP, very similar scenario, is that this client connects through the Internet to a web server, once again, HTTP, TCP/IP, DNS. It gets a file, requesting a file, ASP or ASPX, and with both ASP and ASPX, we would pass that down to the guys in the ASP department on the web server. But ASP has the ability, it's a Microsoft programming construct, it can then contact a database and pull information. and put that information back into the web page, render a page based on what it found in the database, and pass that information back to the user. Now, this is a very important step right here. This is kind of what blew the doors off as far as interaction on the web, because now if a user typed in some information, then that information flowed through the web server to ASP and into the database, and we stored it right here. Okay? Then, if we wanted to pull this information, we could pull the information through, pass it out through ASP, and back to the user here. Okay? And so now we've got this two-way flow of information going, right, between the web server and the user. And it didn't just have to go to databases. It could go to other data stores as well. And so this gave us a lot more dynamic aspects. Now, the best example I can show you or tell you about with this is Amazon.com. With Amazon.com, if I log into Amazon with the machine that I've used before on Amazon and ordered something, they planted cookies on my hard drive. They check those cookies and they can tell what kind of books I bought. As a result, if I log on to Amazon, they're going to show me the latest computer books, usually Microsoft Technologies, because that's what I've been buying. My wife, on the other hand, if she logs in from her machine, her cookies, they're going to show her bird books, gardening books and those sorts of things, and that's what her interests are. That's what she has tended to look at on Amazon. Now, what's doing that? ASP, if they're using ASP or some sort of ASP-like technology where they can save information in the database and then go back and get it using this technology. Now, that's a good overall picture of how ASP works. Now, keep in mind, so far we're talking about ASP. ASP.NET works in exactly the same way. It uses a new extension, ASPX, and we'll talk about that later. But it accomplishes this whole scenario, but a lot more efficiently, a lot cleaner, and it gives you, the developer, a lot of power in how you carry this out. So keep this in mind as we go through the course. Burn this into your brain. You may want to watch this video a couple of times if you're new to this and that some of it didn't make sense. To see the flow here, we want the users to be able to interact with us, and we want the pages to be dynamic based on what the user tells us or what they indicate or how they use our page. So in the next video, I'm going to talk about a course overview. And in the overview, I want to lay out where we're headed in this course so you'll know kind of what to expect. And if you've got some previous experience with ASP or ASP.NET, you may want to skip some and jump straight to some others and so forth, and feel free to do that.